Judging by its most recent federal Congress, can we say the DA is on its way to take over from the ANC as the dominant party of South African politics? Did this Congress show us a party that has transitioned from a representative of white interests to one where all racial groups can genuinely feel at home? Because the reality is that there are 10 times as many black people as there are whites. So, if you hope to grow significantly to a point of taking over power, blacks should not just feel accommodated. They need to feel at home. In this episode, I argue that we are still a long way from that scenario. While there was a sprinkling of black faces here and there, it was still largely a gathering of white people discussing how to preserve their way of life. Hello everyone, welcome back to Joe Talks Politics. I am your host, Joseph Mmusi. Let's get right into this. Shortly after Maimane resigned as leader and then eventually left the party, former DA leader Tony Leon famously called him an experiment that went wrong. When confronted about this, Leon doubled down.
What I said, the actual sentence in the interview, was that Mmusi was an experiment that went wrong, as Mmusi had never committed to the party's ideals before he joined it. And it was a matter of fact that Mmusi had never voted for the DA in the two elections he could vote after 1994. He'd voted against the DA or the DP in those elections. And on the day that he arrived in Parliament as a newly sworn-in member, he was immediately appointed leader of the opposition and the parliamentary DA caucus.
Let us not forget that Maimane was not the first black DA leader to leave unceremoniously. Lindiwe Mazibuko, who was the party's parliamentary leader, resigned shortly after the 2014 elections, ostensibly to further her studies. Some of the DA's opponents maligned Maimane and Mazibuko for associating with what was seen as a white party. Here's EFF leader Julius Malema.
She's a tea girl of the madam, and her role must remain there in the kitchen for making the tea for the madam, because that's what she chose for herself. So I'm not going to be debating with servants of the madam. If the madam wants to debate, I'm ready for her. She's running the show alone. It's only her.
But electing Mazibuko to lead the party in parliament was a brave move aimed at attracting black voters. What I saw during the past weekend was a party that no longer even makes an effort anymore. Yes, the racial makeup of the top leadership structure is mixed. But does that substantially transform the DA into a party for all South Africans? Definitely not. I am sure that the black leaders in that party believe that they can make a difference. In fact, they do feel at home. I am not criticizing them. What I'm trying to point out is that the majority of South Africans are not going to be flocking there because of a few Model C, UCT and VETS alumni. If the DA is to win over the trust and support of the black people, it needs to do much more. At its core, the DA still struggles to internalize and reflect the lived realities, historical experiences, and socio-economic conditions of the majority of black South Africans. This we see in its opposition to policies like black economic empowerment.
We will oppose crony enrichment schemes that see the same politically connected friends making billions, while millions of people see no benefit at all. We know we can build a model of empowerment for our country that delivers real advancement for millions of families.
It is one thing to criticize the way the ANC has implemented BEE. There's clearly been used to enrich comrades and their closed networks, often entrenching patronage rather than broad-based empowerment. But it is another thing entirely to reject the principle of redress itself, as if the structural inequalities BEE seeks to address no longer exist. In doing so, the DA risks appearing indifferent to the very real economic exclusion that still defines the lives of millions of black South Africans. The DA's alternative to BEE, its so-called economic justice policy, risks downplaying historical injustice. Apartheid didn't just create poverty, it created racialized poverty. Black South Africans were systematically excluded from land ownership, quality education, and economic participation. So when you move to a race-neutral approach without addressing these historical realities, you risk treating inequality as if it emerged naturally rather than as the direct result of deliberate racial policies. This policy is tone deaf because it doesn't acknowledge the emotional and historical weight of inequality. For many black South Africans, BEE is not just an economic tool. It is a symbol of recognition and restitution. Replacing it without clearly affirming that history can come across as dismissive. The DA needs to re-examine its policies and assess how much they continue to protect and promote white privilege. The idea that there are also poor white South Africans misses the mark completely. It is an undeniable fact that white people in South Africa, where they are poor, it is not because of their race. It is undesirable that 32 years into the democratic era, race still plays such a significant role in our politics. But we cannot, as the DA is trying to tell us we should, wish these disparities away. If the DA wants to criticize the ANC and call it corrupt and incompetent, it cannot at the same time deny that corruption and incompetence have disadvantaged black people disproportionately. The DA often boasts, as it did again at this Congress, about its governance record, especially in the Western Cape, where it leads in terms of clean audits and service delivery measures. It would be foolish of me to deny that the Western Cape is relatively better run than the majority of the provinces. But the DA would do well to be more introspective. For the majority of black residents, this good governance is difficult to appreciate when they cannot leave their homes because they fear rampant crime and gangsterism. Year after year, crime stats show that some of Cape Town's townships lead the country in crimes like murder, assault, rape, and robbery. And yes, the city of Cape Town leads the country in the number of shacks that catch fire every winter, because at the base of it, people do not have proper homes. So when the DA speaks about good governance, the question on the minds of Cape Townians is, for whom do you govern so well? Maybe the DA will one day convince black South Africans to give it a chance. But if the Congress and its resolutions are anything to go by, it's still a long way away. That was another episode of Joe Talks Politics. If you enjoyed it, please remember to comment, like, and share. And please don't forget to subscribe. That's all from me, Joseph Mmusi. See you in the next one.